What's Happening Dracut is sponsored by BGI Group, LLC.
Good morning, Dracut. Today is Saturday, June 1st, 2024, and this is What's Happening Dracut. This is our 67th episode, and we are coming to you live from our overly ostentatious studios here on Mill Street in Dracut, Massachusetts at DATV. We are happy to have you in here tonight, and we are pleased with the guests that we have today that are going to bring you the information that you need to know about the upcoming town meeting on Monday, which we're going to be pushing people to come to that meeting as much as possible. We're coming to you live on Channel 8, and you can also reach us on Facebook Live, and we also have it on YouTube. At the end of the show, we'll upgrade it to YouTube. But with us today, we have our standby host, our very upstanding guy, the resident architect of Dracut, Massachusetts, who can't get on any boards. Maybe he will now. Here he is, Phil Thibault.
Hey, good morning,
Philip,
everybody.
how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Everything
Yourself?
good?
You know, everything is always sunny in Dracut, so.
Right. Very much so.
Yeah, we'll see if, I do have an application out for zoning bylaw review committee again. We'll see what happens.
And we'll talk about that hopefully when we get to the town portion of our show and talk about the Board of Selectmen and everything. But we know about one issue that has already been brought up about why you shouldn't be on there, but we'll see where that goes. But we also have with us our Teflon Don of DATV, our member of the Board of Directors here at DATV, and our overall nice guy. Everybody perceives him as the nice guy, but I know him for real, folks. And that is Mr. Gordy Scott.
Hey, what's going on?
How are you, Don?
I'm doing good, doing good.
How's Jennifer?
She's very good. I finished my patio. She's been posting pictures of me.
Oh,
doing
yeah.
the patio.
I saw those.
Yeah, so
Did Kyle
my hands
help
are a
you?
little dry from the bricks, you know.
Did
but-
Kyle help you with that?
No.
You did it all on your own.
Yeah, I just took my time.
That's
Took me
all.
5 weeks to do it, but I got it done.
That's all. That's just in time for the brews on the patio.
Video, yep,
Right?
that's correct.
And do you have a TV out there yet? So you
No.
can watch the Celtics?
Nope, not yet, but that's coming.
And
I actually did buy there's like a little cart that the TV goes on, the stand.
Oh, yeah.
And it rolls, so I can bring that out there and roll it
awesome.
in and out of the shed so it doesn't get wet.
Any trips on your horizon?
Yes, I'm going back to my home state of Wisconsin in July.
Good.
So
Little family time?
Yep. All my sister from Connecticut's flying out, meeting some of my friends from high school, and
Are you ready to toss a couple bombs today so that we can get something started for the town meeting?
yeah, I think so.
You know, that's folks. That's
That's
what we're all
your
about,
job,
right?
John.
That's what we're all
I'm
about.
Teflon. You're
People,
you're
you
the
know,
bomb
people think
thrower.
I'm the bomb tosser of town, but well, whatever it is. But also with us today as our special guest is school committee woman, and I believe she's the chairman of the board, Renee Young. Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me on today.
How are you?
Great, how
Thank
are
you for
you?
coming in. You know, people have nerve. You come in here, they're going to like you because you have the nerve to be able to come in here and face the music from us, right? And how's everything in your life, Renee?
Pretty great. May is finally past us, the craziest month of the year, but
Yeah.
almost summer vacation.
Folks, Renee and I have a common interest, believe it or not, and it's hockey.
Yes.
Her boys play ice hockey.
Yes,
So
they
how are
do.
they doing?
Great. We have a tournament coming up next weekend.
Wow.
So,
They're going to go through the summer?
one of them will play through the summer,
Wow.
and then the other one's playing lacrosse through the summer. So.
Wow. It's a very expensive sport, folks. It's not a sport for the light of heart or the light of wallet. but it is fun though, right?
It is fun.
Okay, so we're going to talk about all things schools in a little bit with you, and we also have with us the newly elected select person, and I'm trying to be politically correct. I like to throw that stuff out once in a while, but Selectman Josh Taylor.
Sounds good, doesn't it? Josh?
Welcome, Selectman.
Thank you.
This is your first time back with us since
It is.
Since we had the election.
That's correct.
So the exhilaration, is it still there?
Sure.
Are you still feeling as though you did the right thing by getting involved in this
Absolutely.
stuff? Good for you. Good for you. I'll ask you that in 2 years. See how that goes. But how's your family doing?
Everybody's doing well.
And your son, guys, ladies and gentlemen, his son, he's 13 years old and he's like a tree. He's like a tree.
Yeah, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds at 13. It's not
Wow.
bad.
Wow. And he's a Boy Scout?
He is, he's a Boy Scout. He's actually up at Auburn, New Hampshire at the campground fishing at the moment. My wife just sent me a picture a few minutes ago.
So she's up there with him?
She is.
And
yeah.
she's a special ed
She's
teacher?
a special ed teacher over in Nashua.
In
yeah.
Nashua.
Yeah.
That's very good. So, it's amazing how you end up having a lot of things in common, even though you don't know
Yeah.
for real. Like, my daughter is a special ed teacher. My wife's a paraprofessional, works in Lowell. And your wife is also a
Yeah.
special ed teacher, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of intermingling.
Follow your daughter on Instagram.
Oh, my daughter, Simply Special Ed.
Yes.
She's that's a shameful or a shameless plug. Simply Special Ed. She's in TPT. She's a producer of all kinds of different materials, and
Nice.
she's very good at it.
Yes, she
Very
is.
good at it. She's making good money too, and I shouldn't talk about that because she'll be watching me. Anyways, so we join in the fun, folks. We're live on Facebook. You can call in and interact with us, and if you disagree with us, we love it even more if you disagree with us. You can call us at 978-957-4243 and join in the fun. So we have, what else do we have to talk about?
Do we have a weather report today?
We have a weather report today? Let's see. Do we, Nate? Do we have a weather report? Take it away, Sean.
Hi everyone, here's a quick look at the forecast. It was a beautiful day that we had out there today. As we head into tonight though, temps are going to be dropping back into the 50s with partly cloudy conditions. And here's a look at your exclusive 8-day forecast. So beautiful stretch of weather setting up for today, tomorrow. There is a slight chance for maybe a shower as we enter Sunday afternoon. Very slight chance, but I think we're going to stay mostly dry. Then as we enter Monday and Tuesday of next week, temperatures again in the low 80s. Chance for a few showers, maybe even a thunderstorm as we head into later on second part of Wednesday into early Thursday as we have temps back in the 80s. And that is the forecast for now, everyone. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Sean. That's Mill City Weather. Sean is a great guy. He does great work with the weather. He's probably one of the most accurate weathermen around, and he's not on any major channel, but he is on DATV, and you can catch him on Facebook also. So make sure you look it up if you really want to know what the local weather's going to be. He's the
And
guy
he
to go.
specifies in the Merrimack Valley, so if you want to know specifically for the Merrimack Valley.
Right. Gordy, while you're at it, why don't you tell the folks about our YouTube channel?
Sure, yeah. We have our YouTube channel. You can, if you can't watch us live, or if you don't want to go on DracutTV.org and go to the video on demand, you can go to YouTube. A lot of people have smart TVs, so they can just open YouTube and search for What's Happening Dracut, and we'll pop up, and you can watch our latest episodes.
And if you have any questions for us, you can also email us at what'shappeningdracut@gmail.com, and we will try to research some of those issues that you have. And I've been getting a lot of people stopping me on the street and in different places talking about different issues about the town, which is good, And yesterday I was at Market Basket, and Phil, when you go out and shop, how many times do you get people stopping you and saying,
Oh, always great show. Sometimes it's, hey, Phil, and it's like, you freeze because you don't know where it's coming from, and you turn around and, they say great show, keep up the work, and they just start asking questions too. Hey, what about zoning bylaws, Phil? What's going on there? Or MBTA communities, what's going on there?
Yeah. Gordy, what do you have some pushback from people too, right? People recognizing you from the show?
I do. I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know who they are.
You don't know who they are, right?
Like, oh, nice to meet you.
Well, yesterday I was in Market Basket and I had, hey, John, can I ask you a question? I turn around. To my surprise, it's someone that I don't really speak to that often. But they asked me a couple questions about Proper Farm, and I told them, watch the show, you'll see where I stand.
Patty
on
at
it.
the checkout in Market Basket always says, "Oh, there's Mr. Scott. How are you?"
And-
I watched your show. I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
really? Well,
And this
great."
person who I haven't had a lot of interaction with is on a board in Dracut. And that I said to the person, I said, I don't think we've had 3 sentences to each other since you've been on the board. And I said, I know I've given you some hassles here and there, and I'm going to probably do it again, right? Because if I disagree with you, I'm going to disagree with you. Unfortunately, I don't always come across as the diplomat that I should be, because I'm a grumpy old man now. Right, Renee?
I
Right?
didn't say you were good.
But I'll shout out to Jennifer Kopczynski, because she stopped and we had a very pleasant conversation. And I'm looking forward to her kind of now being more of a neutral player on the Board of Selectmen, hopefully, right? And not being part of any cabal. We don't want any cabals. We want you to just do your job. In fact, Josh, we've already had a little tete-a-tete that people have been talking about.
We have?
Do you-
What's that?
Do you think? Did
What?
we have a beef? No, we
You
didn't
and
have
I?
any beef.
I could care less. I told you.
We had a
Post what you
conversation,
want.
and I told Josh when I supported him that I don't want somebody that's going to agree with me all the time. And I think you've heard me say that too,
Well,
Renee.
what a way to come out of the gate and just kick you off right at the beginning. I mean, just go for it.
Yeah, so we had a little conversation after his first.
okay.
But you know, as usual, the Lowell Red Hat newspaper didn't get it right of what the whole conversation was about or what have you. But that's okay, because like they say, it was Mayor Curley, I think, that used to say, as long as you spell my name right in the newspaper, right? And please push What's Happening Dracut.
Yep.
Because our interactions over the last 90 days has been over 47,000 people interacting on our Facebook page.
I'll also add that Oscar Wilde said the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
There you go. That's very true. So let's just jump in right away to some of the stuff. First of all, Phil, do we have any condolences or birthdays or anything that we want to talk
No,
about?
I'm glad to say that I don't know of any condolences that we need to pass along.
Thank God. Thank God. So we're happy to have with us Josh Taylor and Renee Young, and we're going to get into some talking about what's going on with some of the things in all different town stuff. We'll talk about, if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay for the whole hour and a half. And when we talk about the warrants, you can put your 2 cents in, and we'll be happy to do that. Or you can leave whenever you want to. You think you have to leave. If you have something family, I'm all
See ya.
in with that. Yeah. Or we haven't even
Or if
started
you had
yet, John.
If you had enough.
Yeah. So let's talk about the departure of our assistant town manager and finance director. Phil, what do you think about it?
I found it, I was actually surprised by it. I mean, I didn't necessarily see it particularly coming. I would imagine it's been on his radar for a while if he takes another job with another municipality. So, you know, there's a process behind that. I've been through the process, and I've had that process short-circuited on me.
Yeah.
But it's a while. So, you know, whether he is kind of having his fill of Dracut and wanting to move on, or if this was an opportunity that presented itself, you know, with a better focus for him, or money, or what. It seemed more of a lateral move to me when I saw the title, but maybe it's an advancement for him.
Yeah. Were you surprised, Josh, when we got that announcement?
I wasn't surprised.
No, I wasn't either, especially after what happened with the election. I figured that if things were a little different, he might have stayed, because there was one candidate obviously saying that we should move within town, and it was kind of an endorsement of what's going on with the manager and the assistant town manager. And it sounded like if Ann leaves, and I think that's on the radar because she has said she's not going to be here much longer, and there's speculation on that. Some say, you know, she'll be here for another year or so. I say she probably won't be here that much longer, because she can see the political winds and how they're blowing here. And that doesn't mean that she's going to get fired. Nobody ever talked about firing her or anything of that nature, but she might cause herself to get fired for some of her actions. What did you think about the departure of Victor?
I was somewhat surprised, but at the same time, I do think obviously it was probably on his radar for a while, as as Phil said, it's not something that you just apply to and 2 weeks later get the job. So I imagine he probably applied for this a while ago. What his motives were, I don't know. I can't even begin to guess. However, if I were a betting person, even if it is a lateral move, it's probably a pay increase. It's not a sinking ship. Sudbury is a different place than Dracut, right? So maybe the nail in the coffin was the election, but it was definitely something he would have had to put in place over a month ago.
Yeah.
Well over a month, months ago probably.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been looking because he can see how Dracut politics is rough and tumble. There's no question about that. But it's not any more or less rough and tumble than any other community.
It's just a different beast.
It's just a different beast. Gordy, what's your take on it? Now, we broke that story that he was leaving. And then we found out it was Sudbury that he was going to. And I had a conversation with him myself, which is a pleasant one for a change. But go ahead and tell us.
Well, I
your
think
take.
if Josh would have lost the election, I think he would have stayed because I think he was, a shoo-in for the town manager position because, just because of the board, the composition of the board at the time, if Josh wasn't in there. Now that Josh is in there, I think he doesn't think he has a chance to get it because hopefully it'll be an open process, one that we set up. They rightfully set up in the past, but they didn't go through with the process. But I think that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, on that.
Oh.
And that's why I think he made the move.
Yeah. So let's dive into the fact that now that he's gone, or he's going to be gone, he's going to stay till July, which is good. I think he's a good numbers guy. I also think that had he not been overshadowed by the manager, in simply my opinion, that I think he was more of an attack dog for the manager. And he got, in my view, and I could be wrong, but in my view, he took the political mantra of a majority of the Board of Selectmen and did the dirty work of that cabal at that time. Joe DeRocco is not a friend of mine, will never be a friend of mine, and I will never say anything nice about him, because he's just an evil guy, and the bottom line is for 20 years, he stymied Dracut moving forward in a lot of ways, whether it's be schools, economic development, whatever it is, he stymied it. And that whole group today, I drive by the way, I drive by Town Hall West, and amazingly enough, there were no cars there. On a Saturday morning
they
at 10
probably
o'clock
took
in the
that
morning?
sign down.
What's that?
They probably took that sign down.
So let's talk a little bit about the budget deficit. It's projected over the next 4 or 5 years, it could balloon to about $10 million, right? You sat in on the tri-board meetings.
I sure did.
And I got to hand it to you. We don't always agree, and nor should we, right? So, and I don't look forward to that we won't disagree
I'm sure we will disagree in the future.
on a few things, which is fine, as long as we can still keep an open dialogue. Like I said to Jennifer Kopczynski, if we had an open dialogue, we would understand each other a lot better, right? And understand that where I'm coming from is I'm not coming from any place where I want to control anything or be powerful or anything of that nature, because I know I'm not. But I do have a voice, and I will say what I have to say, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about this whole deficit and where it is and where do you think it's heading, and then we're going to jump into
the history of it or where it's heading.
Yeah, let's
The
start
history?
with the history.
Like when I became aware.
Yeah.
All right, so I said this in that tri-board meeting, and I've said it since then and in joint subcommittee meetings, and I'll say it again now. So one thing you will get with me is I'm an honest person. Sometimes I'm blatantly honest, and people don't want to hear what I'm saying.
Sounds like me.
Yes.
Painfully.
And when in the moment, so what happened in that tri-board meeting is I can get heated. I'm aware of that. But if I'm saying something and I'm getting heated, it's because you're not hearing me, and you should be hearing me. I will tell you the truth. I have no reason to lie about this. Back in the fall of, so this is, I'm just trying to get my years straight. Fall of 22, November, December-ish, I was informed by the superintendent that the town manager and Victor are concerned about the budget past FY24. and that we are likely heading down the road of a deficit. And that the town manager believes we need an override. And that she believes she has 2 votes in Heather and Tony Archinsky, and that we would just need to get, she thinks Jen would be the weak link, that Jen would be the weak link. We need to try to get her on board. So Allison Volpe and I were on joint subcommittee at the time, and we called a joint subcommittee meeting with Jen and Heather, and we presented how we want to get more funding for the schools, and we'd like to be over 100%. And we talked about some other issues, but we're looking at a potential deficit problem. We think we need to look at this further, start looking at the town finances. Let's call together tri-board. By this point, it was probably January, February of 2023. So we started meeting with tri-board in March of 2023. With the hopes that the town manager, I think we went over the solar presentation at that first meeting. And the town manager started to lay out, and maybe at the subsequent meeting, the town finances and her projections. And it was very much laid out there by the second meeting, I believe it was the second meeting, what the projected finances look like. That was May-ish 2023. Those months are all kind of running together, but it was last spring.
Right after the election.
Right after everything is fine in Dracut,
Yes,
and we're
yes.
moving forward.
I'm glad you brought it
I
up.
have that saved on my phone, and I will never delete
Keep
it.
the momentum going.
I
the
will
momentum
never.
going.
So what was interesting about that video
funny.
is when that was posted, I already was aware of this deficit, or I was already made aware. And Allison Volpe was made aware.
Yeah.
The school committee was made aware of this potential deficit. And then that video dropped, and I had never laughed harder in my life. I'm like, lies. And whether it's intentional lies or just lack of information from the person that you manage, because I think that's another whole story for another day. But I think that oftentimes the town manager thinks that she is the boss of the Board of Selectmen.
Bingo.
And it drives me insane. She says jump, and they would say how high.
Yeah.
I would like to hope that there's change going forward. But it was just like what she said was the truth, and we took it to be the truth, and that was the end. So when I ever saw that video, I was like, she's lying, and I don't even know if she knows she's lying. Like Allison.
Yeah,
Janess.
Allison
Like
Janess.
I don't even think she knows that she's wrong.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'm going to stop you there. She knows. She knew.
You think she knew?
She knew. She had to
I'm
know.
going to give her the benefit of the
Because,
doubt on that.
gracious of you, but I'm not going to be that gracious.
I would find it difficult that she would inform the school board and
Well,
the
because
superintendent.
no, because she was looking for her allies. Anne was looking for her allies, and she knew Allison wasn't going to be an ally.
Well, Allison Janess wasn't going to be an ally?
In an override?
She
was looking for her allies in an override.
I would have to disagree with you on that. I think she knew that Allison and Joe would be
For the override.
for the override.
Oh, she thought it was Tony and Heather.
Would be a no.
There'll be
No,
no's.
she thought they would be in favor of one.
Yeah, well, they're
They
no's.
would be in favor of letting it go forward, but I don't think they would have been in favor of the override.
Tony said it.
So it's a matter of.
Well, Tony
so-
said
so
it, but
there's-
Tony said it when we got to the
Yeah,
tri-board. So
right.
at that point in time, no one knew. But
Yeah.
he didn't say that till the tri-board.
Well,
So let it go forward, but then you have people who need to, essentially a board that needs to actively campaign for it.
Right.
And I think and believe that Allison Janess and Joe DeRocco would be
out
essentially
there for it, saying we need
campaigning
this.
for it.
Interesting.
Well, this is what we've been saying on this show for months, that Allison Janess ran for re-election with all that stuff saying we're heading in the right direction, and then they did it again during the last election with Josh in it saying we're heading in the right direction. I said, how can you possibly be saying you're heading in the right direction when you got a deficit? And shame on the manager and the assistant town manager and anybody else in town hall that knew there was a deficit in the wind. They should have been preparing for it now. They should have been preparing for it in 2022, and they didn't. They kept spending like crazy. Spending like crazy.
Yes, but I think that, and again, I don't often give praise to the town manager, and I'm aware of that.
Yep.
But I think that she felt like she didn't have the support of her board to try to solve the problem. And so I think she was afraid to inform them.
But again, to that point, from what I understand, she never really informs the board of what
She
she's
didn't.
doing.
No, she told the superintendent, who then told school committee, which isn't.
So, right,
Right.
why wasn't your board, the board that you're supposed to answer to, why weren't they the first people informed?
Right. No, and I know that in the tri-board meeting, Ann denied that happened. But like, I know when I knew about the deficit. I'm aware of when I knew about the deficit. How did I know about it?
Yeah.
Short of finding out from her.
Yeah. Well, how do you not for anything, but if you have a budget at your house, right, and you're knowing that you're overspending what money you're taking in, what do? Do you go out and buy a new car?
You have to cut back.
Do you go out and buy a new refrigerator?
Right.
You don't. You save that money. You put it in the rainy day fund so that you can continue to operate. And this business about not using the rainy day fund for, to balance a budget in bad times, that's all BS. Because
In
that's
bad
what it's
times
for.
you can. In bad times you can.
Yeah, exactly.
But that you can't sit there and hire people based off spending
Exactly.
your savings. That becomes the problem.
I agree with you.
Because
agree
we're
with
at a point where the schools are one of the lowest funded in the state. The town municipalities, I think, is one of, I don't know the exact stat, but we are one of the lowest funded municipalities in the state. It's an overall problem. It's not just a school problem.
Right.
It's just, I don't think the municipality side is shouting it from the rooftops as much until recently.
Yeah, I think like Drake gets 300 out of 351 or something.
Right,
like that.
very low, very low.
I can agree with everything you just said. And the systemic issue of this is not finding the roadway or the path to expand revenue
Right.
without going to the property tax owners,
Yep.
the individual property tax owners. And that's the biggest rub of any community, and particularly this one. Because when I was on the board, 15 years ago or so, I'm the one that proposed the creation of the Economic Development Committee. And when I proposed it, I said, this is a committee not to just be ribbon cutting. It's a committee to get out and expand the business base where you have, and if it was done 20 years ago and it started then, I said, let's bite the bullet and hire a person who's involved with economic and community development, economic development and community development to attract those businesses that are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million projects, data center, a big warehouse. Because saying that because where Dracut is located, you're not going to attract that, that's totally false. Totally false. All you have to do is
Especially with
go out
all the
west.
people that work remotely.
Yeah,
Right.
My husband's company is based, well, it's a European
Yeah.
company, but where he worked prior to COVID, the building, is in Andover. But now they're all remote. And so his coworkers are all over the world, but they still have that building, right?
Right.
They still have that building for like meetings purposes and whatnot. Well, if you're flying in for meetings, who cares if you're driving to Andover or Dracut?
Right. My last major vote was the vote on the town manager when Dennis Peendak left. By the way, Joe DeRocco, and I have to throw this out all the time so everybody can remember what Joe DeRocco's legacy is, right? When the then manager, Dennis Peendak, who, by the way, I have a lot of respect for. I don't agree with everything he did either, and I let him know that. But the bottom line was, when he was ready to leave, he put in his papers to retire. Joe DeRocco, behind the back of the Board of Selectmen, went in and negotiated a new contract for him to stay another 18 months at 27%. 24, 27%, it's a relative number, but it was up there, right? And of course, he bid at that, right? He said, let's stay for another 18 months or whatever months, and then you can retire. And he got a big bonus. All of his money got at the higher rate. All of his buybacks were at the higher rate. I mean, that was Joe DeRocco's legacy right there. But we were trying to get a person to come in here for economic development with an economic development expertise. And we found that in Jim Duggan. Now, you don't have to agree with everything, and I didn't agree with everything that Jim Duggan
Right.
did. I didn't agree with his bull in the china shop kind of thing, but I also endorse Trump. So but I know what the bottom line is, right? But the first thing he did was bring in a major development. right, Phil?
Yeah, so the corner of
Genesis.
Loon Hill
Hill,
and
yeah.
Broadway.
The Arbors.
Those three properties,
Oh,
because there was
right, all three
actually
of those.
Genesis,
Yep.
Arbors, and Circle Health. Those three projects, I think, ended up essentially a $75 million value. to the
Right,
Right.
and that. And
That's
oh,
economic development.
exactly.
Not some, like, I love that the businesses in Dracut are getting more business from the current format of economic development that we have going on. However, that's not bringing in more business.
No.
And that's not, if you don't bring in more business, you don't bring in more money.
Right.
So
And-
to tout economic development as the answer to our financial problems isn't realistic. Not in a 1 year, not for next year, not for the year after. Long-term 5-year plan, that can be a 5-year plan. That's not going to solve next year's problem because we didn't do it the last couple of years. You can't get a building built in like
Right.
It's planting the shade tree. You're not going to get shade until
Right.
20 years.
20 years down the
Right,
line.
right.
And that's why I did it back then. But Gordy, everybody went apoplectic when I said, when I went after the firing or the reduction of the economic development director, who isn't an economic development director, and not by
You got
any
attacked.
description.
You got attacked.
I got attacked.
You still get
which is-
attacked
which is
on the
fine.
Facebook page.
Which is fine. I love it because the fact of the matter is, he's not an economic development director. He's more of a communications guy. He put out every day. You see something come out about a ribbon cutting, about a
Pamphlet.
great,
Put out a pamphlet.
That's all good stuff about the
And
business.
they I think he put up the signs for the different parts of Dracut, like you're in East Dracut, you're in
Ridiculous.
Kenwood, you're in.
That's ridiculous.
And they did. I think that the signs for the farms in town, like 2.4
Right.
miles this way, I think
Size
those
of-
were part
Yeah.
of it as well, which I think is helpful because I don't think that people necessarily knew we had all these farm stands in Dracut. I think it'll bring more people in, but it's not bringing more money to the town. It's bringing more money to the businesses.
I think that actually predates him, to be
Oh, it
honest.
does?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
it does because Farmer Dave was looking to do that. And there was an issue of only one farmer doing it and it kind of got expanded. I think it was actually a grant through the state to
Okay.
help do
Yeah.
that.
Well,
But I will say that that Dan had actually sent me an email regarding a grant program that's being sponsored through Verizon, and I think he sent it to multiple business owners, saying, "Hey, this is available. It may benefit you." So, I mean, that's certainly a nice service that he did, and should be commended. But
Right.
he needs to be able to.
It's not
do
bringing more
more.
money to the town.
Correct.
It's bringing
well, he
more-
hasn't got the expertise to do more. And let's lay that right on the table. He's not an economic development director. He hasn't got that expertise, and he should have been charged with. They should have hired somebody, right, that was going to go out and do this stuff, market Dracut to those big companies, right? So it's just a ridiculous thing that goes on. But we got a little bit off the subject. So getting back to the deficit, Josh, what's your feeling on the deficit right now? Because you're new in there and you
Well,
just got
it's
in and
new, lot to absorb, lot to take in. It's going to be a tough road ahead. We're all going to have to work together. I mean, I just got on to the education subcommittee, so we can work with those people, look at the budgets going forward for that. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work. There's no easy answer to it.
right. Now, nobody's opposed to boosting up the schools. I always said I was a proponent of boosting up the schools as much as you can. But you have a big pie to look at, Josh. You're interested in schools, you have to watch the whole town.
Correct.
And that's her job to try to get money for more money for the
Yep,
schools.
absolutely it is.
But now where I will part from her is I will say it's not at all cost.
No, I would
Right?
agree. I would
No?
agree that. I mean, obviously, no one's happy being like last in the state
Yeah.
for funding, right? So, and in an ideal world, that I think the schools would have more funding, over 100% net school spending. I know that Rob Shepard's doing some crunching some numbers, and he's quickly seeing that we'd have to get over, like, I think 120 to really start making a difference to get the services we would need to really start making a big difference. 105 is not going to make a big dent in what services we can provide. It's more money. But nonetheless, even if we stay at 100%, what is frustrating as a committee member is having to fight for the money to get to 100%, and at every opportunity fighting for, like, okay, but that money's ours. The state's giving you that money. That comes to us. Oh, but I'm just going to take that off your appropriation because now you're getting more money for the state. Well, you appropriated X amount to the schools already, so that's
And for the viewers, not to interrupt you,
It's
but
all
for
right.
the viewers who may not understand it, right? What she's talking about, when you get the money from the state and we put a budget together, now the town's going to give you chargebacks, right?
No,
Is that what
actually,
you're talking
another
about?
issue, which it's an issue coming down the road that I'm not saying it's definitely going to be a problem, but it
Yeah.
could potentially be a problem. The budgets were formed with Chapter 70 funding funded at, I want to say $30 a student, and the House increased it to 100, but our budgets were already formed after that, and our budgets were formed, our
Yeah.
budgets were. And that's what's going to town meeting is whatever the dollar number is, and I don't know that off the top
Right.
of my head. But at the end of the day, the budget's not done at the state level yet.
Yeah.
When it's done, Chapter 70, I think I heard, is now up to 110 a student, but our numbers are based off 30 because that's what the governor put forward.
Yeah.
And so when that increased Chapter 70 funding comes through at potentially $40 more per student that the state is giving us, the state is giving the schools in Dracut, right? $40 more per student everywhere. Is that we're hoping that with working with the Board of Selectmen, the town manager doesn't say, all right, now I can give you X amount less because the state gave you X amount more. That is what we see. That's what we see coming our way.
that shouldn't happen.
But that's not the intent of this legislation. That is not the intent of our state legislators.
Have you heard that, George?
I have not heard that.
This
yet.
is one of the, there was
So-
an email that was sent yesterday that
Yeah.
we hope to discuss
So
soon,
this
but-
is a serious, this is where the town has to be more focused, right? If you're getting more funding from the state, certainly, you still have to have skin in the game as a taxpayer in Dracut. And I agree with the net school spending stuff and being able to send that. And I somewhat agree with the chargebacks, but reasonably, not being unreasonable. And this is a good little segue. Where do you think the chargebacks stand right now? Because that's an issue, right?
Well, at the last report, at the meeting, there was no discussion on it until
The
I
manager
questioned
didn't bring it up.
until I questioned it. And, I'm told there's an agreement, but we still haven't seen the figures of any agreements. I haven't.
So I'm going to segue over here to Renee, who I'll bet already knows what the agreement is.
Yes, I don't
but
know.
you're the selectman and you don't know.
you're saying it's lack of communication?
Yeah. I'm saying that once that Desi call happened last Friday, I received a phone call immediately, and I sometime later Friday, sometime the same
yesterday?
day.
Yesterday? Or
No,
a week
Friday the
ago?
20. I don't know my dates. Friday
All right,
the
but-
24th.
So the week.
A week
So
ago.
Josh had a meeting, and I think he had a meeting last week, right?
We had a meeting on Tuesday,
And
so
the
after the
manager
meeting.
had that same information that
And
you had?
she was in the same Desi meeting as
And
Mr. Stone.
she didn't
Yeah.
report anything on the DESI.
There was nothing on the town manager's report about any of the chargebacks.
This is
'cause
what
I
the
questioned
problem
it.
is. So what is the result?
So we are essentially going forward with the existing agreement with an amendment to the trash to be $225,000. I think it's 225.
Versus
225.
what was she proposing?
504.
Wow. Yeah, that's utterly ridiculous. She put her fingers on the scale on this one, in my view. In my view, she saw chargebacks as a possibility to gain more money back to the town budget, to lessen the deficit.
Right, I do, and I can say a little bit more about that. Other than that, they're agreeing to disagree to go forward with FY25 essentially.
Yep.
So we're staying at the current chargeback rate for the student, like the administrative costs, and we're staying at the current rate for snow removal. And the only thing that changed was trash. They will reconvene with DESI again in late summer to start talking about FY26 and get a better handle on that per pupil number, because the state said a hard no to whatever the dollar amount that the town manager proposed. That's allowed under DESI. They said no to that. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, so I apologize. I think they're trying to dig into actuals, so the town manager has tasked the people at town hall with coming up with what they do in terms of time commitment, et cetera, for the schools. And it has to be based on actual numbers, and nothing that's a capital project like the Campbell School can be counted. That was made clear to by DESI to Ann, because that is a capital project. That's the improvement of the town. That is a town project, so you can't charge back. You can't charge back the Campbell School,
Yeah.
which she thought she could.
Now, is that the only two things that the town charges back to the schools is snow and ice and trash? Is there-
Snow, ice, trash, and then a per pupil, then an administrative cost, because they do like post RFPs and stuff.
Okay.
In the police,
And they do the payroll, right?
And what?
the safety officer.
The SRO, that is not in the current agreement. I think they're going to keep it separate And I do know that there was an agreement between the town manager, Mr. Stone, and on the DESI call that now the chief will be looped into those conversations for the
School resource officer.
So,
because it impacts his staffing too, obviously.
yeah, obviously, because he's down to begin with, and now you put him in. But there was concern about charging the schools for the whole year versus just the 180 days, right? Was that part of it? In other words, charging you the salary of the police officer that was the SRO?
So we pay a salary. We pay their salary, but it's for the 180 days. So right,
They were trying to go the whole.
we pay half, right? Half of each. Or this past year we paid the full because we agreed to, because of how much money we got this past year. So it's approximately $90,000 per police officer, approximately.
Yeah,
And
which
then,
is a lot of money too.
Yes,
Right.
but then they're free to go back to their regular their street patrol and whatnot. in
So
the
that
summer.
hasn't changed.
That's
That's
changed.
not changed.
No.
So are you kind of satisfied with what's going on with the chargebacks? You're not going to go out and do a bid for trash too, right?
Oh, we would have loved to. We had a bid for trash.
I know.
We would have loved to take that bid.
So why can't you work towards that?
Going
In the
forward.
future.
I
like
think
in
we
the
will next year. I
Okay.
think we will go out to bid for next year.
It'd
That
probably
will-
save you money in the long term.
Yeah.
Right. The trash thing is, I've called it Trashgate, and I will continue to call it Trashgate because something stinks about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The 504 that we were being charged back as of up until April 20, my dates, the last week of April, we were being charged back 504 for trash in the FY25 budget. And we had a bid in front of us for $183,000. We wanted to take it.
Yep.
But right as the day we were going to discuss it as a board and vote on it, the superintendent was informed that the town manager had extended the contract and we were obligated to be part of that contract. The timing of that is all very suspicious. I can give you.
Nothing nefarious.
Do you
goes
want the
on.
timeline on that? Because I have
Yes.
exact dates on that.
Yeah.
So sometime in January-ish, I had the exact meeting written down. The town manager did in fact say that if we didn't agree with her number, we'd be off the trash July 1st. We can go get our own trash.
Wow.
I've watched that meeting several times. So we did. We went out and got our own trash number. And I know the superintendent checked with the
I know he checked several
I
times.
know he checked with her
times at
several
least,
times.
Yeah.
And he went out and got, so what happened was on March 20th, Stephanie Fields, our business manager, she sent the paperwork to, I forget the person's name, at Town Hall, so March 20th.
Barbara O'Connor.
Thank you.
probably.
To be for the RFP to be posted, so that's March 20th. For the RFP to be posted on March 25th. The RFP was posted through Town Hall on March 25th. The town manager signed that contract with Republic on March 26th.
Wow.
So 5 days after Town Hall was aware that that RFP was going out. And I imagine that the town manager had that contract more than the day she signed it. She probably had it for a little bit before she signed it.
Yeah.
So she might have had it on her desk, but that also means she knew that the school's trash was broken out in that contract and that it only amounted to, I believe, $379, not $504. So at March 26th, the latest, she signed that contract for that $379 amount for the schools. On the fourth Monday of April, and I think it was April 21st, but I'm not positive, so don't quote me on that. We had that school committee meeting, and Allison Volpe asked for a copy of the contract. So Tuesday morning, when the superintendent reached out for a copy of that contract, he became aware that we were being overcharged for trash and for FY25. And by Friday afternoon of that same week, Victor was sending over a new chargeback number.
Wow. Yeah. See? Wow.
But
Yeah.
for a month, she sat on that.
Yeah.
For a month. If we didn't ask for that contract, would we have ever known?
Nope. You would have just taken it as gospel. And that's one of the things that I have been saying from day one. Even when I was on the board with Dennis Pindak, who I trusted a lot more than I trust the current manager or assistant town manager in terms of numbers and accuracy on what's right and what's wrong. And that's why I keep saying to guys like Josh and other friends of mine that are in town government, I say, trust but verify. Because they'll tell you they'll cherry pick what is convenient to what they want to do. And they'll tell you that it's gospel. One of the things is, I don't want to get off track a little bit, but one of the things is about the special employees.
Oh, yeah, I heard that was,
You know,
heard that was false information
very-
provided on Tuesday night.
That's just one thing.
One
Right?
piece.
And the other threat, and we'll get into it in a little bit, is when they say that we got to buy this piece of property because it's going to be a 40B if we don't. That's the threat, you know? And it's constantly, they want to scare everybody into doing whatever their mantra is. You know what I mean? So those are the things you need to really keep watching on. What's going on with Campbell School and the construction, and what stage is that at?
I will admit that I missed the last meeting on it because I had just become chair and the invite wasn't sent to me. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't at the last MSBA the meeting with the MSBA, but I believe they picked an architect.
They picked an architect.
No, so
No.
the
Sorry, I wasn't.
the town received three proposals,
Yeah, that I knew.
and they were all from very reputable firms, as far as I'm concerned. I know them fairly well. The MSBA actually sent a letter to the town asking if we were satisfied with only receiving three, and the committee voted to have the town authorized to send the letter back to DESI saying, yes, we're satisfied with the three strong proposals that we received. So DESI is, MSBA is actually makes the selection for the designer, and that's being done this Wednesday, which is the 5th.
But we put forward a recommendation.
So we had a recommendation for the Mount Vernon group, who the town has used for the Richardson School and for the high school project. So we have a very good working relationship with Mount Vernon group, and they were essentially our choice, and we're making a recommendation to MSBA to have them appoint
Right.
Mount Vernon group as our architect.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I think MSBA goes forward with the people that.
Well,
with
so when we
what's
did the high
recommended.
school, at that point, the ultimate selection was also done by the MSBA, and the town went to Boston. I was on that if you want to call it a subcommittee, but we had 3 votes, and the MSBA I think has like 12 votes
Yeah.
altogether. They may have had more back then, but our 3 representatives argued in front of DESI that we wanted Mount Vernon Group, and I don't think MSBA was necessarily going to have gone that way without
Okay.
our arguments. But I think we convinced them that Mount Vernon Group was the right choice for Dracut. We've dealt with them before and had very, very good success.
Okay.
Hopefully it's the same this time, that we make our arguments that this is who we want to work with. We have a very good working relationship with that architect. As a matter of fact, the OPM is the same OPM that we used with the high school project. So it's building a team that already has known success, and I hope the MSBA sees it that way
Right.
too.
So all right, so we're on a clear path with that, and that's still a couple of years down the line, right?
Yes, I think we're
So-
probably, a year out from voting?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
feasibility study will take about a year, and that will, I believe, be in time for November town meeting next year.
Yeah, okay.
So
And
at
then we
that point,
probably
we'll
are
have a
like 4
number
years out from there.
for construction costs, and that will be able to put on the May election, essentially a debt exclusion number
Yes.
that we'll be able to deal with.
Okay. So now let's circle back to the budget and the deficit, okay? We'll use the Jen Psaki word, circle back to the budget, all right? So the budget is in deficit for this year. That has been balanced, am I correct, Josh, to your knowledge?
That's what they say.
Okay. And it was
Trust but verify.
And I keep going to.
But there's roadblocks to the verification, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah. And who are those roadblocks? Yeah, so I keep going back to Renee because she's more familiar with all this
Yeah.
history of it, but we're going to have some good conversation with you coming forward. But so the bottom line here is that we had a 3.4,
2.5?
2.5 deficit
For this year.
For this year. And next
Well,
year
for FY
projected to
25.
be higher at 3.5.
I believe that's right.
Okay, and then it goes up again.
3.6.
3.6, and then it goes up again the
Yes.
third year down the line.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a total of almost a $10 million deficit.
That's
over
without throwing in
course.
the wrench of like what DESI might say that the town has to pay for
Yeah.
schools. That's
Yeah.
that's the thing you can't predict.
Right. So, we know that the town manager has proposed, and she says, I'm not proposing it, but I'm just making a suggestion. Yeah, you're proposing it, if you're saying it, that to do a $10 million override, right? So where do we stand on that? Is that still something that's going to be going out there, that we're going to need an override to fix this
It was
problem?
brought up, and there hasn't been any more conversations about it in front of
Yep.
me.
Yeah.
I think it might be not a dead issue because you
Yeah.
can't ignore the
No.
problems,
Yeah,
right?
can't ignore it.
But I have the same sense you do that the town manager might be leaving in less than a year. Maybe she's trying to not on her watch, like not like
Yeah.
leave before the.
Well, she's
before it
leaving
really,
because
well,
she's,
she can retire. Why wouldn't you retire at this point?
yeah, why do you want to go through all this?
Right.
Right?
Why?
I agree.
But I would hope
But
that-
she's created this issue.
Right.
She's created this problem. And thank you, Joe DeRocco, Allison Janest, and Jen Kopczynski, because, and Jesse Forcier for not going with the town manager that the committee
I'll
had.
also mention Allison Hughes
And Allison Hughes, yeah, because I mean,
they circumvented the whole process.
they circumvented the process and didn't take, Phil, because you were on the committee, there was an economic development guy in that mix.
There were three of them, to be honest.
But the biggest one was Fort Devens.
Biggest one was he was the head of the Fort Devens Economic Commission.
Built the whole city.
Well, what's
within the
funny
city.
is that was right when I started to get interested in Dracut politics, but I wasn't in it, right?
Okay.
So like I'm just watching from the outside, not knowing about Town Hall West. So I became informed shortly after that. But if you're an outsider and you're watching that all unfold, you're like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
Like this is, you literally think that the people making the decisions are the biggest idiots ever. You're like, what is going on? Why would you ever do that? You just,
Yeah.
and then you learn.
Yeah, you learn.
And then
do
you learn.
You do learn, but the problem is not enough people in town learn.
Right.
Because
right.
you have the
Or
same.
don't care.
Don't.
No,
Well,
right.
it takes a lot of time to really get caught up, and then you need.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I get
Everyone's
it.
got a busy life and they don't.
But the older people like Gordy and Phil, they are paying attention because they're on fixed incomes.
Older people?
Older people.
Gordy.
Oh, okay. I like how you did that.
Those
You
70
youngster.
issues. Well, I pay attention obviously because I'm on a fixed income, and if my wife wasn't working, we couldn't have the lifestyle we're in, even though I have a decent pension, right? But the bottom line is we're paying attention to every dollar that goes out because we have a nest egg, right? So those people in 50, you really start to think about it when you're 50.
Yep.
You start thinking about your retirement and you say, I got to be careful where that we're not putting, you're in that group,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That you want to make sure your IRS is right and
IRA, yep, you got
IRA,
enough
whatever.
savings
Your
and-
savings is growing. So when the town tells me that I'm going to go for a $10 million override, what does that tell you, Gordy?
And how
what's
much
the
is
first-
that going to equate to?
And it's going to
person?
equate to about $1,800 on your tax bill over the course of
over what, 3 years?
over 3 years.
Right.
But it's still $1,800, and that doesn't include the 2.5 raise,
Right.
the,
On
the,
top
the
of it.
automatic 2.5
So
raise.
that's like 600,
600.
approximately $600 every year
yeah.
for the next 3 years.
And then
So every tax bill is like 150
yep.
plus the 2.5.
So that's why, in my view, and I agree to a point, and I guess I would vote probably to say let the people vote on it, and I would probably put the question on the ballot. There are others out there, and I'm leaning towards them too. I'm kind of in the middle. Is you say no, you stop it right there at town meeting, right? You stop it at town meeting and say fix the problem first. Then come to me
That's
for
another
money.
problem we have at town meeting, though.
Right.
Is that
Uneducated people.
well, not only that, but if you go to town meeting, 90% of the people work at the town.
They have right.
There's that's why I said the general person doesn't care, doesn't know,
That's
No.
why
doesn't
Renee
care.
just
They don't
alluded to
show
she
up.
got involved because she
know.
was watching. Now, how many of people are going to? She has kids in the schools, so yeah, she wanted to make sure that I wanted to do it because it's in my blood.
That's
that
why
wanna-
that's why I stopped going to the town meeting the last couple times, is because when I put up the warrant article about
Yeah.
the CPC,
Yep.
that it was the fix is in.
But
Because
you-
it's so, and the town manager will stand there and go like this and make sure everyone's voting the way they
But
want.
Gordy,
them to
the
vote.
fix is in because of that thought process.
Right, I know.
If you stay home, you're 2 less people or 3 less people that can vote to counter the other side, right? So,
But when you're
those-
outvoted 200 to 50, then it's,
yeah.
It's,
well,
I,
mean,
I
it's
will
gonna
admit that it's very draining energy-wise to be constantly battling for what's right.
right.
It is.
And it's so much easier
It
to
is.
just say,
Just
you
do the
know,
right thing.
I give
that's
up.
it. I'm just
Until
I'll
they
walk-
get the tax bill.
Well, well, even at that. But I mean, just to do the right thing, it seems so difficult sometimes in this with this particular government.
That's why we need to get more residents to come out to town meeting.
Absolutely, and I'm always saying it's a hard fight, but you need to fight.
Right.
We have a lot of people on Facebook watching us and
Yes.
a couple comments. What are some of the comments being made out there?
Angel wrote a lot about the TIFs are wasted money.
We're going to get into that, Angel. Stay tuned.
Amen.
Yes. Yes. Oh, she also made a comment about my daughters. She loves the cooking units. On,
Oh yeah, she loves your daughters.
yeah, no,
Special ed
that's
page.
good. That's good.
Yeah, we
So there
have-
is something to like about me.
We have Joe Wilkie was on earlier.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. Good.
Alyssa Nazaro was on earlier, so we have
Yeah, we got about 24 people watching right now. as
Allison
far as I
Volpe
can
is
see.
on with us.
Yeah, so that's good. So, but let's get back to the override. So you're going to get people that are going to say, at town meeting, it probably will pass and go out to the ballot, but it'll get crushed on the ballot. My fear, and I'd be for a new school. My fear is that the school's going to go down too, because
They won't be
people
the
are
same
gonna-
time, right?
It'll be
No,
close.
They might be.
They may be right on the same time.
Or
They
even,
won't be the same ballot.
even if they're not the same ballot, I guess my
It'll be a year
concern
apart,
is
yeah.
that one kind of feeds off the other.
Well, no, but here's the problem. The override, you're just going to get your typical voters to come out. If it's anything like the high school project, you get all the parents will come out and vote for a school.
So
They will not
true.
come out and vote for anything else.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
correct.
typically true. But when the people find out, and the voter will find out, because there'll be some attention paid to it, that you're asking for a $10 million override that equates to approximately $1,800 added on the bill, and then you're asking us for another override of what? How
I mean,
much?
if you put it in the middle, you're looking at $125 million for the school.
So you're looking for that, which 60% will be
60
reimbursed.
60%
We
60%
get
would be
that.
reimbursed,
But-
but the full, I
You have to put the
I
full
believe you
amount
have to
on.
put the full amount.
But and then it's paid over 20 years or 30.
I think 30 years. They may go 30 years with that, or 20. It's still.
Isn't the Richardson coming off soon?
Yeah.
Richardson was
just come
was
off.
actually built under a different system.
Oh, no, we paid cash for that.
Yes, we did.
We paid cash, which is why there's no AC in
Essentially
there.
built
Or is it the Inglesby? There was
built
one
out of
of
the budget. It was
We
built
had
in the
We had
budget.
it in the budget, yeah.
I thought one of the schools was coming off the
Maybe the high school, but
the
no.
Inglesby or something.
So
like that.
the high
Yeah.
the high school is probably another 10 years or
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
But the
Al-
rest of them was
the
cash.
Alyssa
library's
Nazaro
coming off.
Yeah.
did chime in on Facebook. She said,
Who's that?
Alyssa Nazaro.
Yes.
She said, we need a strong look at our budget. We need to be looking long-term picture. I'm looking forward to the accountability of the current board and current finance committee really looking at depth where we really are.
Well, you know, Alyssa, you're welcome to come on the show anytime you want. Just give me a call or send me a text. We'll have you on. The finance committee has to have some more backbone. They really have to
Oh,
start.
they've been pushing this year.
Yes, but they need to really
They have been pushing.
To have Ann to not give them figures, and I have some privy to this, some information they're stalling on giving them.
And they're not voting on things because they're not getting numbers. So this finance committee meeting, I think they met 3 or 4 times in order to get through all the warrant articles
Right.
because they refuse to vote on things without the information.
They're a powerful board if they make themselves powerful.
Yes.
If they acquiesce to the manager, no matter who the manager is. I don't care who the manager is. You're the check and balance. That's what the finance committee is for. And they sit there and say, well, what do I do if she doesn't answer us? I call the Attorney General's office in a minute.
Now,
In a
have you met
minute.
Alyssa? Alyssa's chair, she's like, peck, 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 peck.
Yeah,
I think she
well,
just
good,
bothers
good
them
for-
till
good
she
for her,
gets what
good
she
for
wants
her.
from them.
Good. And Alyssa, we're not going to agree on everything. Also, we know that, but we did agree on Josh. So there you go. So there are roads that we can cross and agree on.
Rich Cowan just chimed in too. He said, no competent person has suggested a $10 million override. That would go far beyond inflation.
Right. Well, they have been the suggestion, Rich. So you call it. Rich, did you just call the manager incompetent?
Sure did.
You know,
Intentionally or
bravo,
not, I'm not sure.
bravo, Rich. The bottom line is that getting back to the school override and an override for operating expenses, they're two different ponies in this race, right? But when you have them talked about in the same timeline, both will be a disaster. Both will go down, especially with a deficit that you have. We have a deficit now, and I'm going to segue into the warrant articles now. The major warrant article on that, there's two major articles on that warrant. One is the proper farm, and the other one is the TIF. Right? Those are two glaring issues that people that are sitting at home right now watching this that don't really get involved in politics and don't know all of the players and what have you, they're saying, you want us to build a new school, you want us to dip into our pockets for a deficit, and now you're buying a farm when you don't have the money, when we're in a deficit, and you're giving away tax dollars to a sitting business here. You're giving away dollars. And then you're buying a fire truck, where you're borrowing a fire truck. For a fire truck, you don't do that stuff when you have ARPA money, in my view. Am I right, Josh? I mean, I don't know.
Well, they're borrowing for some, they're using free cash for
So
others.
it wasn't the fire truck free cash?
You don't,
Well,
No.
it's
It's
like
bonded. No, they're bonded.
They're bonded.
rounding it up, yeah.
3.6 million, I think, for fire equipment,
Yep.
something like that.
3.6 million for
Right
fire
around,
equipment.
right around
To
there.
be clear, not that they don't need it.
No, they definitely
Right,
need
Right,
it. They
right.
definitely
This
need
is
it.
how we're financing it.
Well, that's what I brought up early
Right.
on. It's if you look at the budget on it, there's one truck that was like 1.6 million and it's borrowed. The rest, there was 100,000 for one, 830,000 for another, 100,000 for a deputy car, 75,000 for a chief car.
A deputy car.
Yeah,
Has a deputy had a car in the past?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah?
I believe
They
so.
have? Have you seen the deputy car that's being driven around by the
I'm not
police?
gonna lie. Oh, is that the Tahoe?
I think there's 5 new Tahoes.
I
at
saw the
police station.
Tahoe. I drive a Tahoe, and I know how much I paid for my Tahoe, and I'm like, what in the world? And I did get some reassurance from some people that theirs are not like decked out Tahoes like mine. So I mean, that's a
It
little
doesn't
bit.
matter.
but-
You see the perception. It
Yes.
doesn't matter. People see that riding down the street, Tahoe.
Well, I'm pretty sure they have 5 new ones. The
Denali.
chief just got a new
They don't
one, too.
care what level
Well,
it is.
actually, this is like so petty of me, and I will admit but at the safety night last year, when I think it was safety night when the pink fire
Oh,
truck,
my God,
oh no,
yeah.
maybe it was Memorial Day parade when I first saw the pink police car, and I'm just like, we have no money, and we're painting cars pink.
We're wrapping cars.
We're wrapping cars.
Well, that's what the average voter is saying, Renee. That's what they're saying. And when they see, let's talk about warrant Article 24, okay?
Which one's that? Sorry.
That's the Broadway
TIF?
Road proper farm.
Oh, proper farm.
Okay.
That one's sticky.
Yeah, I mean, Ann Vandal, first of all, let's give some history, right? So Brox comes to the Board of Selectmen in January, and he's informing the board that he intends to go put his farm in the APR. Tell us what an APR is.
Agricultural preservation.
And what does that do for the farm?
So it obtains money from the state. Essentially, the state is buying development rights.
Right.
So the property is still owned by the farmer. He's sold property rights, so he's given a lump of cash
Right.
to pay for that, and he continues to farm it.
Right. And there is, in the APR, there is the development rights first refusal for the town.
So that property, the proper farm is in 61A,
Which is another agriculture.
which is another agricultural program which allows the property that's being farmed to be taxed at an agricultural rate,
Which is
far less than the normal rate that property is taxed by a community. So that would probably, I think it sets the value for agricultural property at like $10,000 an
Something like
acre
that.
or
Something like that, yeah. So
Uh,
he's paying
where-
far less in tax.
Yeah, whereas a normal acre of land in Dracut may be taxed at $250,000
And to be fair, that 61A does not include his home.
That is correct.
It would include the barn.
Correct.
And
Any
it would include
agricultural.
any kind of
structures, that's
other
correct.
structures that were related to the farm. So the home was separate. So So to be fair to John Brox, he's not getting a tax break on his home like some people have that perception.
That
right?
is correct.
Okay, so now he gets a tax reduction on that from the 61A. He wanted to put it into agriculture or the APR, and he gets before the board, and all of a sudden you have Joe DiRocco, the brain surgeon of the group. He gets up and he says, "Why aren't we looking at this for a school?"
No, I believe he said that would be the
be a
perfect
perfect place
location
for a
for a
school.
For a
school.
school. Now we
I
have
called
a
the
phone call?
superintendent and asked
Okay, so now we turn around and superintendent of schools falls off his chair.
He didn't quite say no, but
Yeah.
he didn't say, I said that a school should go there.
Yeah, right, right. But he
We're basically staying out of this.
but I have good resources, right?
Right.
Good birdies that sit on my shoulder and tweet in my ear. And they say that conversations with the superintendent say that's not an ideal place for a school to go because it's
It's not where
further-
the Campbell's going.
It's
a horrible
further,
spot for a
and that's
school.
what they were thinking, right?
It's not where the Campbell's going.
Right. So the bottom line is he throws that out, and there's light bulbs that go on with Mr. Brox, right? And now Ann shouts out, well, we could buy that for municipal use. Maybe DPW, maybe a cemetery, maybe whatever else we need it for down the line, 30, 40, 50 years. You think me as a voter, an educated person in town government here, is going to vote for that kind of a thing and allow a possibility of a person like Ann Vandal and some members of the Board of Selectmen or in town government, I'm going to trust for them to develop that land properly? This is current. You think I'm going to think about what it's going to be like in 50 years? When the people who are, I don't want to disparage people, but there could be people on that board that are less intelligent than the ones we have now, right? Phil, right?
So I mean, I guess my issue with that whole thing is that, I mean, it was going, from my point of view, fairly smoothly. It was following the progression of going through APR.
Right.
If Mr. Brox needed additional funds, it has been worked with CPC, our Community Preservation Funds. Farmer Dave was done in a similar fashion. Sage Farm was done in a similar fashion. That APR money went in as a third of the value. CPC put in a third of the value, and the landowner, the farmer,
Right.
had a third of the value. So I mean, there was a significant investment by all parties, state, the town, and the property owner, to make this agriculture or this preservation work.
Right.
When Joe threw out about a school and then all of a sudden, Ian talks about municipal use, I think it just clouded the whole thing, and Mr. Brox, I don't think, wanted to deal with it. So he said, that's it. I'm just going to sell the property.
Right,
that-
so
I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
So now he goes back, and all of a sudden, this issue's not on the Board of Selectmen agenda. But it goes into executive session. Executive session, the non-transparency, the worst kind of a meeting that you could ever put a politician in.
I don't get why that was executive session.
Right.
I don't understand it. Because at the end of the day, it's not the Board of Selectmen approving the purchasing of the land. So it's the town, it's the townspeople at town meeting.
Right.
So the townspeople need to know the ins and outs and the ask and what it appraised for. Like, why was that executive session? There's nothing legal there. Like, it's not an issue for the Board of Selectmen to vote on. Why was it ever in executive session?
Now, the one guy that knows a lot about purchasing
saw that
an
phone call.
APR, right?
We still have that phone call.
Oh, we have a phone call too. Let me just make this comment. One guy that knows about all of this stuff with agriculture is Warren Shaw. You can't deny that, right? So when I spoke to Warren Shaw, who had worked with the APR, and then this all went into the executive session, he said there's never been a purchase of a property from a farmer in town that was in executive session. It was always in public. So he doesn't understand why this even went in either. I believe that's what he was saying. So we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's take that caller right now. I don't know who it is because Nate didn't give us a name,
Right.
so it could be anybody. Who's calling?
Hi, John. It's Alyssa Cesaro.
Hi, Alyssa. How are you?
I'm good.
I have a little problem hearing, but I think I can hear you well enough. What's your comment, Alyssa? Good to call in. Thank you for calling in.
Did you watch the finance meeting on Thursday?
Yes, I did. I watched it in and out. I didn't see the vote at the end because it cut off, which I got to have a conversation with DATV as to why it cut off. It cut off just
Yeah, that's
before.
real-
Go ahead.
That's really weird. We were live till the very end, so.
Yeah.
So our vote was, I had put forth to reluctantly approve the warrant article forward with our approval. It was a 3-2 vote. It was very contentious. Nobody felt very comfortable with making the vote. We had a lot of questions. It was very difficult to vote on given the circumstances. But basically what it came down to was we were informed that Mr. will not sell this piece of property to the CPC.
Yes.
He will not do it. So if we vote on town meeting and this does not pass, this will go open to the public to be able to purchase, which then enables real estate developers to come in and purchase this land. And that makes me very uncomfortable given our current financial state in the town, especially with all the issues with the 40B that's very local to where this property is located. Having no control of and purchase this residential 26 acres that are going up for sale.
Yeah.
So we were between a rock and a hard place with where the CPC cannot purchase this land and having this land go out where it can be developed uncontrollably. If the town is to purchase it, although I do not like the fact that, you know, I want to see strong oversight as to what would happen with this. In fact, I think Josh will talk to his idea, which I completely agree with. I think it's an excellent opportunity for the town to make some money off of this land, but also preserve the aesthetic and also have a good portion of land put into like preservation. So it's really a tough decision. I think it's very weird that he's willing to sell the farmland well under appraised value. I mean, they came out with the appraisal of $940,000 that we're paying for it. I think there's a lot still I'm not aware of, but it's overall it's just a completely concerning article. But I think it's concerning in both ways it could go.
Well, thank you so much for calling in, Alyssa. We're going to let you hang up unless you want to call back. If we say something you want to counter or whatever, you're welcome to. Thank you again. But some of the things you are saying is right, but that's the rub. The rub is we're letting the homeowner or the property owner dictate to the town what we're going to do with the property. It doesn't make any difference whether we pay the money through CPC or we give it through free cash or whatever we give them for the money. It's all the town. Mr. Brock says there's something wrong here. There's a red flag. There's a red flag here that tells me that when you're telling me that this is the only way I'm going to sell the property, then I'm going to pull back and I'm going to say, I'm a no on this. I'm a no on this for a number of reasons, and I said a couple of the things about we're not developers. We shouldn't be in the business of developing property. We should leave that to the people that know how to do that. But there are some parts of that whole thing that I agree with. I've had this discussion with Josh. I believe we need a cemetery. I understand that, but this isn't the time that you're going to lump that in with this and tell me that we should go forward with this with all these red flags going up. And the least amount is saying that we're purchasing this property when we're in a deficit.
That part's the tough part to like swallow for sure. I do like Josh's idea, and I think it would make us back the money we purchased.
The problem is if you buy it with CPC, you cannot do cemetery there.
Oh, no, but you can subdivide, right? Do the
No,
cemetery.
no, if you buy it with
No.
CPC, you
No,
can't
no, but if you buy
subdivide
it
it.
with the ARPA, no, you can't. Not-
You have to go to the state legislator and have it turned
Right.
over. You can't just, so if we buy that property with ARPA funds.
Right, then we can do
We
it.
can subdivide that. Now, whether we take the 6 acres that's high and dry and a hill in the back and turn that into cemetery, there's an acre that's already next to where the commercial use is, that could get sold off for commercial use. You could preserve everything in the middle. You could sell it back to CPC essentially and put it in a land restriction.
So I would make the argument that it could be purchased with CPC and have a cemetery because
I agree.
that gets to historic, because you have your historical Richard Cemetery
Cemetery that
there.
already exists there.
It's already,
And-
it doesn't, it's not
it's an
even on the
ex-
same parcel.
but-
It's another entity that owns land in between those two.
So now we're going to have two cemeteries that are no longer contiguous.
Yes.
But it's being promoted as an extension of the
Yeah,
Richardson
that's,
Cemetery.
that's
So-
even makes another issue.
Can you, Nate, can you bring up the picture
Oh,
on my
I love
screen?
that picture.
Sure.
I love the misspellings.
Nate, bring up the picture for on. Yes. Okay, that's one. There you go.
There's the next one.
Yeah. That's another issue.
What, the spelling mistake?
The spelling mistake.
Oh, okay.
The bottom line is here, you know, that you're talking about 26.8 square acres of it, 26.8
Yes.
acres, I think it is?
26.2, I believe.
26.2. But only 10 of it is buildable because there's restrictions on it. There's the Rivers Act that 200 feet on each side of that river needs to be a buffer zone. So that takes a lot of land out of the mix.
Call me.
It's less attractive to a developer for 40B. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be attractive and that somebody
Maybe a farmer will come and buy it, and
Oh, there are farmers that are interested in farming it.
or maybe someone will just come and buy it and want to keep the land the way it is.
Well,
You don't
and
know.
there's developers that build houses too, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
You
say
could-
say only 10 acres is usable for building, right?
That's 10
And
houses.
It's or you do like my development, and there you can do 20 houses, and you have open space.
Right.
Correct.
Because
And you can have all the wetland area be the open space.
and that's exactly what my development is. All the wetlands.
No,
the open
well,
space.
an open space subdivision would require some upland.
Right, right. I have like some farmland and stuff, but you have enough land there that the developer
Yeah.
could buy this, build 20 houses, and then you have.
So the way open space subdivisions in Dracut are done, he has to show a conventional subdivision first, and that sets the number of houses that he can have.
Okay.
So 26 acres, if there's 10 that would be available for house lots, then you're probably ending up with 9 or 8 house lots.
Right.
And then an open space subdivision would say, oh, okay, you can have 8 or 9 houses on that.
You know, Mr. Brox came to the Board of Selectmen in January because he wanted to preserve the open space. And he was going to do an APR. He was talked out of it, and now there's something underlying that has got him into this mix, right? To not sell it to the town for CPC.
Yeah. And then there's all these other competing voices that
Right.
come in that
So
that just
the
confuse
issue is
the
going to
whole
be
issue.
really tough to pass at the at the
Right,
town
because
meeting.
someone-
Josh's idea is a good idea in a good economic time when you have the time to recoup the money. Because Josh's idea is that, you know, is right. We probably will make more money.
You'll make more money on it, but it'll
but
take
you-
a while
but
to get
Josh,
Right,
it
the
and
back.
net-
people aren't dying to get in there, right?
But
No, not at all.
that's the key. How long? 20 years? 10 years?
Right.
And then in the meantime, we have upkeep. We have
Right.
to have somebody upkeep that property.
Yeah,
So
my
the
take-
bottom line adds to the deficit.
Yeah, and my take on it is the town people of Dracut have to decide, do you want a farming community and pay more taxes and go to the voting box and say, I'm going to pay, I want to
Well, the
vote,
rest-
I want a farming community, so I'm going to pay more, you know, I'm going to pay for all these overrides, or do you want a developer to come in, build houses and increase your tax revenue?
Alyssa,
You can't have it both
You
ways.
can't because if we're going to keep it a farming community, you have to be okay with increasing your taxes because you have to fund
Exactly.
everything in
Everything else.
town. You
Right.
can't have it both
Right.
ways.
Can't have it both ways. So, you know, and that's one of the things we tried to do back 20 years ago when we developed the Economic Development Committee, and that just went kaput.
Well, the reason I looked at it differently after the one meeting I was at was because we have the chance to subdivide it. The town can buy it with the ARPA funds. They can retain a piece of it, they could sell a piece of it. You know, we can't save, CPC can't save every piece of land in town.
But I'm
Farmers
not in
can't save
favor of
every
saving a
piece.
piece of it. I want it to be all open space and all preserved, and we have the ability to do that and then cut off the piece for the cemetery, which, by the way, Ann Vandal was proposing too. But the bottom line here is, you know, we already have some development on a piece of property that they subdivided from the farm. That is a gas station and a.
Yep.
Now,
They
is that what you want?
They took off two
You want to put that?
acres.
You want to open up that front lots and put
It's not that you
more
want to,
commercial
but
on
do
there?
you want to have
houses,
a bunch
but-
of houses
I
in
don't-
there, or do you want to break off an acre or two for another business and
No.
save the land in the back? It's up to the town to make the decision what
But
they
I
want.
don't want to
John.
save the land in the back. I want to save the land in the front too.
Well,
You know, that's just me.
unfortunately, the homeowner, the guy selling the land, doesn't want to go through that process.
you know
I
something?
wasn't privy to any of those discussions. All I can do is make a decision on when I came in, the information given.
You know, this is where we disagree
Yeah,
on
a
this
big
issue.
issue with
Yeah.
land preservation done through open space subdivisions is that the frontage land is never saved.
Right.
So as you're driving through Dracut, you'd like to see, you know,
Yeah.
these wooded areas.
Right.
But the developers always put the open space tucked away a little corner.
Mine's in the middle. It's a-
and-
it's a
and
hill
then
in
you
the
never
middle of
see
the
it.
What I
Never
find
seen
really interesting, John, is you just sat here and you agreed that you can't have it both ways. You're
Right.
either for an override or you're for saving the land. But you're dead set against an override, but you want to see all the land saved. So which way do you really want it? Because you're
No,
sitting
I
here
don't want to
telling
see all the
us.
land saved.
You just
know-
said,
No, no.
rewind the
I
tape,
want-
because you just said you want to see the whole thing preserved.
I
That's
want
what
to
you
see
said.
that piece preserved, yes.
Okay, so then
But there
are you
other
for
pieces
the
that you
override
could-
or not for the override?
I'm not for the override. I will
But
not.
you
be
can't
for the
have it both
override.
ways.
Yes, I can.
Well,
I most certainly can.
I have always been.
Okay.
I have always argued that you can have it both ways
There you go.
because you increase the density of our already developed areas. You have Collinsville, you have the Navy Yard, that you can increase the density, increase residential use within those neighborhoods. Our current zoning bylaws, which everybody seems to want to keep because it keeps Dracut, actually promotes sprawl because you can't go up. So now you have to have these single-family homes. You have to, and I'm certainly all in favor of having single-family homes, but it drives all the development out to the farms and doing, you know, the
Right.
business as usual, single-family farms. Okay, let's do an open space subdivision.
It's the same thing with the.
But let's put that open space in the back where nobody can see it.
It's the same thing with the MBTA, the overlay
Overlay
district of the MBTA.
Absolutely, the community.
That should be.
When I have been at those
Navy
meetings,
Yard.
I have made the argument that the Navy Yard would be a prime location for that. And as a matter of fact, I made the arguments for Loon Hill and Broadway, which they said, yes, that would be a great place for economic development.
Right.
You get more residents in that area, and those residents will need services, not necessarily from the town, but for businesses.
Right.
They want a shop that they can go to, a coffee shop or a convenience store. So you keep them in that neighborhood.
Yeah. So anyways, we beat this dead horse. Let's talk. We can come back and talk some more about this, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more discussion on the town floor.
Well, it's
come
gonna be-
Monday. It's Monday,
Yeah.
so you got to go, folks. Unless you want to just keep spending us.
This
into
one, I think
deficit.
this one's going to take a
Yeah.
long.
Monday
Oh,
the
see, I think
3rd.
the TIF's going to be easier. Oh, you meant the.
Now I want to talk
Yeah.
about the TIF real
The
quick.
TIF, I think, is gonna-
We could talk about the pickleball too, because the pickleball thing should be paid for through ARPA money and not through
CPC.
CPC money.
and that would loosen up money from CPC to be able to buy this particular property.
I have I
That
like.
property wasn't on the radar when all this went down.
Right, exactly.
The other thing is I'm for the CPC, but the way they spend money to me is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The way they've been spending money, it's crazy.
But the good thing about what they're spending the money for on CPC is not salaries and not increasing the base of the budget through salaries. It's protecting properties.
Right.
and helping. That's the good thing.
Right.
All right. And that's why I'm in favor of CPC and don't mind paying that tax.
But I hate it when they put stuff on the school property and say you can't use it because
that's the issue with the pickleball.
or
thing, and
let's
I will
build a
bring that up.
bathroom that we're not going to lock all the time and no one can use.
That
or,
will be
you know,
discussed at the meeting because the football field we paid over $1 million for,
and you can't use it.
Pop Warner's being charged for it, and I understand why they have to be charged. But at an exorbitant rate, they should get a cut rate at some point.
Yeah.
But that's another issue for another day, Madam School Committee.
Oh, yeah,
person.
no, this is a hot topic issue on our committee.
Okay,
We
and
know.
the tax incremental, the TIF, which I believe you voted against.
I voted against it.
Okay, and that is a giveaway as far as I'm concerned.
That one's mind-blowing to me.
That's a no for me.
Short of just being friends with the owner, I don't understand why anyone thinks that's a good
that's
idea.
what it is.
I don't know.
Well, that's what it is. That's the Dracut politics.
So if
Joe
you get the-
DeRocco gave his best friend, or one of his best friends, a guy who held his sign, gave him money.
And what were the recommendations by this? You got outvoted, right? Like it was
Yes.
3 to 2, or
Yeah.
Yeah, you voted.
No, I voted no on it.
Yeah, you got outvoted though.
Outvoted, correct.
Yeah.
I
You and
believe
Heather voted against
Heather
it.
voted against it, I voted against it, yeah.
And I think, but a finance committee, I think, did not recommend the TIF.
Right, which is kudos to the finance
Because
committee.
they're in charge of finances and
Yeah.
they're not looking at this of like,
Look at TIFs are good, and I voted for TIFs when I was on the board.
when properly
If
used.
you're bringing in a $100
But
million
when you
new
br-
business.
Exactly.
that's not a new business. That's the point of TIFs.
Right.
This is
We
not
put
new
in a new
business.
data, $100 million data center.
Right.
You get a TIF.
I didn't agree with it. Don't say, well, we did it for Top Donut. I wasn't on the board and I wasn't in town when that happened. But the bottom line was, I wouldn't have been in favor of that for a current business to get a TIF. I'm sorry.
Were they already in Dracut?
They were.
They had, I think there was some discussion with Doug of getting a TIF.
Oh, okay.
They came into town, they built their donut shop,
And then he gave.
and then the TIF came forward. So
Okay.
it may be to some degree comparable to what's happening now. I don't.
But J&J has been here for
He's
Oh,
been here
yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
It was already doing this,
Yeah.
like was going to do it, not get
Already
into his
built the building.
business. Lives
No,
in
there's
town.
a second building there going over,
I
isn't
know.
there?
Well, it's supposed to be.
There's a
I
second
bet
phase
he doesn't
to it.
pay. I'll bet he doesn't build that, and that's a parking lot. I'm going to bet.
So as far as a TIF in existing buildings, I would be all in favor of it if there was a program already established. So let's have a TIF program for businesses to upgrade their storefronts. Because
Yeah.
a lot of the storefronts in Dracut are looking pretty sad. Give them a TIF to upgrade their storefront. That increases the value of the property, and then give them a TIF
Right,
that,
and then get
hey,
the
you
money
don't
for
have to pay that tax increase
For 10 years,
well,
or
I
5
would say
years.
for something small like that, I would say for
5
5
5
years.
years.
Yeah. And that's an innovative, out-of-the-box thinking too, right? And that's a good thing. But again, you have to pull back on that stuff when you have a deficit.
But in this, not your selectmen's meeting, but the one that was with the prior board when this came up,
Yeah.
I was sitting there. It's one of those things, again, that if you're watching as an outsider, you're just laughing. You're like, okay,
I was sitting in
the
the
town
audience
manager's
watching it.
report was just ended, and she just finished talking about the deficit. And then this comes up, and I'm like, we're talking about a deficit, and you want to give someone a tax break when they're already in town. Well, like, maybe just bad timing, right? Maybe this would be a different topic if we were like flushed with money.
Yeah, a
We're
lot of it's
not.
bad timing. I
We're
mean,
not.
Proper Farm's bad timing.
We're talking about pushing a potential override on the average taxpayer who's not a millionaire
Right.
Yeah.
for a
And you take-
millionaire to get a tax break.
Right.
I'm like, this is
Yeah,
insanity.
and he's paying slightly more for 5 times the building.
Right.
Slightly more now, instead of a lot more for that same size, for that building. So we're down to a minute and a half. I wanted to get into some national politics, but I guess we're not going to get to that.
Oh, I had
This is
enough
more
of that
fun.
at coffee.
It's more fun.
But yeah, so the bottom line here is that I think that it's going to be a very interesting town meeting. I know there's a lot of people going that don't normally go.
June
that are gonna be
3rd
there
at the high
I'll
school,
be there.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. And
If you need a ride, call me. I'll get you there.
Yeah, and I'll do the same. I'll get you there. But the bottom line too is they're also going to be talking about issues that are important to everyone. Beaverbrook Farm, there's a proposal there for a new driveway, which is another subject we should get into. That we sold a piece of property that had the only access to Beaverbrook Farm to get in, and now we have to build a $1 million driveway, which doesn't make any sense to me either. But again, it's CPC money, and I don't mind that money being spent for a good reason to get into the farm. But again, the perception is you're spending money like drunken sailors. So listen, believe it or not, that's an hour and a half gone by, guys, right?
I think
So
you got to
you're
add another
welcome.
hour and a half so we can finish the topics.
Right?
Thank you very much for coming in
No
today.
problem.
We are welcome anytime to come in, and please come in when you disagree. I don't care. We'll talk about it. Let's get our guy who closes out the show extraordinary. Does a
No,
good
Renee
job.
and Josh, thanks for coming. I think this is a great conversation. I think we should do this a lot more. School committee, different
Anytime.
selectmen come in and talk, just because you can get your ideas out there, and you can take some of his ideas to your board and vice versa, and we get a conversation, stimulating conversation going. because of it all. And it's because of you, our viewers that watch every day, that we appreciate you. Stay online. John's always posting stuff on our Facebook page, so if you want to stay up to date with what's going on in Dracut, follow us on Facebook. And as always, when it's Saturday and it's 11 a.m., it's What's Happening Dracut.
Goodbye, folks.
What's Happening Dracut is sponsored by BGI Group, LLC,